I'm a primate and you are heaven sent. So when we having conversations, I don't mean to dent.
Hey, what's up, folks? Welcome to yet another session of Hey, Some Coffee. And in today's session, I decided to do something unique. Not entirely unique, but something I used to do when my YouTube channel was new, which is basically review my own tweets or review the tweets I made in, say, a space of 2 weeks. And at first, I thought it right to review tweets by prominent scientists. But I figured out that, or I came to realize that these people already get enough attention as it is. And so I thought, why not just review my own tweets? Because my tweets are basically grounds for some of the coolest conversations we could have. And I felt it right to just review my own tweets instead, as opposed to prominent scientists, because those already get enough social tracking. And so in this episode of Hey, Some Coffee, I decided to do a little bit of that, like just give some commentary work on some of the tweets that I've put up in the last 3 to 4 months. And it's something that I felt right to do. So without wasting much of your time, let me get into it. So the first tweet reads something like, new time millennial type atheists are so soft-spoken, deeply philosophical, and overly friendly, and to say the least, that's pretty fine, I guess. I mean, some brave people had to get us here for us to even have peace as an option. So what I meant to say there was, in this short period of time I've been an atheist, or somebody that's critical of religion, I've noticed a trend starting from people that I've been listening to, or who are mainly the famous 4 atheists, which are Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Christopher Hitchens, and Dan Dennett. And when I started listening to these conversations back in 2020, they were having the conversation in a slightly more, in a less friendly way. It was the debate, you could tell, there were 90% of them were slightly combative and ad hominem. And rightly so, because at the time, religion was enjoying a perfect place where it felt like it can't be really criticized. And these people were coming in with a certain level of ferocious intellect and just bombarding everything. It was like mainstream science against fundamentalist biblical narratives or Islam, to say the least. So when all this was happening, you could see that the debate was being engaged in such a ferocious manner. And people didn't like each other. But time has changed. If you look at new YouTubers who are born from that surge of the new atheist influence, you could tell that they've softened up a little bit and they're engaging the God debate in a more philosophical manner now. And there's this tendency to rubbish the efforts that the four atheists of the apocalypse had to bring to the table, which is to say almost that they didn't engage the conversation deeply. But that is precisely missing the point, because those people engaged the conversation at a place where it mattered at the time. They were talking to people who believed in the Bible as literal truth. So you find that if you see a debate, say for example, between Bill Nye and Ken Ham, that was the time and the situation at which these debates were being engaged. People believed the Bible is a literal record of historical as well as scientific fact, and they were engaging it at that place. But to say now, currently, that they were missing the point is entirely to miss the point. So my point of the tweet there was new type millennial atheists, or the younger generation of skeptics and intellectuals, are slightly soft-spoken and they're so philosophical. They've flown over engaging the God debate at such a lower level, or at a level that matters so much to the lay person. And in philosophy, one dissatisfying thing, or something that makes me feel bored out of the debate, or something that makes me feel a little hesitant to engage the God debate in a philosophical way, is in philosophy, there are no win-wins. There are no objective answers. So you find that on both sides of the extreme, both for theists and atheists, you find there are very good arguments to be brought to the table, and no one can have a sucker punch win in a God debate. It's 50-50, and everybody can be intellectually honest and coherent in their arguments, whether for or against God. So philosophy just feels like there isn't much winning of the conversation, really. It's just an abyss of arguments that primarily lead nowhere substantial. So that was pretty much what I was going for. And when I said brave people had to get us here for us to even have peace as an option, back then religious people felt like religion isn't something that should be criticized. It had to take certain people to get us to see that, no, there's conversational pressure that needs to be had here. So the other tweet says something like, I can't honestly bring myself to believe that there was once a time it killed me to miss a congregation or church service on a Sunday. I mean, just looking back from where I stand currently, the memory is extremely startling to say the least. Damn. Yeah. So what I meant to say there was just how drastic my life has changed. For both my mind and my worldview, it's changed so much so that my conscience doesn't even feel icked to miss stuff like church meetings and congregational meetings. I'm just a whole different person with different worries and concerns mentally, to a point where it's actually laughable that I stressed about missing a congregational meeting or not doing a field service. The other tweet says, if you can pick up a gospel song from the rubble and take God out of it, enjoying it merely as a good piece of art, you have become the avatar. It's like jamming to Cardi B or Burna Boy without being preoccupied with the shallow prose. What I meant to say there was, okay, some of these tweets, granted, could be low-key, condescending, and sarcastic, but what I meant to say there was, it's actually possible to enjoy music without overly being preoccupied with its religious connotations. I have some songs by Pompey, for example, but obviously I don't listen to the song the same way that a believer would. For me, it's basically just a piece of art that's good, regardless of the message that is. That's why I said you can enjoy it without being preoccupied with the central message. You can just dance to it. And 90% of the time, when you're listening to music, it's not like you're so preoccupied with the central theme of the song. It's usually about emotions and vibes and just how it's making you feel at the time you're listening to it. So, yeah. I can't wait for those Fridays after a long, hard day of work to just drive out of Lusaka alone with Vancouver Sleep Clinic playing in an undertone, almost as if their voices are springing right from where your consciousness lights up. What I meant to say there was, the corporate world can be stressing. Work can be stressing. When I started working, I've never looked forward so much to weekends where you just get some time to sleep props, where you get some time to have adequate sleep, where you get some time to wake up at any hour you feel like doing. But unfortunately, sometimes I work even on weekends. So what I meant to say there was, I wish there was a time, I can't wait for that time where just a Friday after work, you have left all the paperwork, all the load of work behind you, and then you just drive out of Lusaka to a place where you can just enjoy your weekend in peace. You know, there's just that feeling you get when you're driving on the highway, the sun is setting and the nice song is playing in the background, and you're just at peace. You're just on a long drive to who knows where, and everything will be corrected for on Monday morning. So yeah. It's crazy. I have a pretty fixed and rigid routine. It runs something like work, books, night outs, home. That's a pretty quick way to get old, to have life pass you by without noticing. But what is life really if it ain't those things? So sometimes routine gets very draining. You know, so here I was basically talking about how my life runs on a daily. So it's either I'm at work, reading a book, drinking with my friends, or I'm at home. It's just those options. And when you become deeply invested with all those options, it feels as though there should be something different that you should do, because life gets so routine and this can be so draining. And then because of this, sometimes you can also be preoccupied with those occurrences to a point where you don't even know you're aging, where you don't even know you're growing old. You're not getting any younger. So it's almost as if old age can catch you off guard and you didn't even realize that you were getting old, because life is moving so fast, because you're so preoccupied with all these daily activities and you just perfectly fit into your routine. So yeah. And it kind of speaks into the next tweet, which says something like, sometimes living can get as routine as just lying in a casket. There's that point where everything just becomes ponderous, or it just becomes too plain and straightforward, where you're just following a fixed routine, you're doing pretty much the same thing. It's so similar and so fixed, it's almost as if you're not doing it in the first place, or it's almost as if you're just lying dead in the casket. It's almost as if you're just lying dead, buried, doing pretty much nothing, and year in, year out, all this time is just flashing by you. And it's not like you can realize it. It's not like you have inner subjective experience that can tell you that time is passing by when you're dead. I think both a scientific and a philosophical case can be made to assume that you won't even notice the time lapse. So it's just that some of these things get so routine and straightforward. Life gets so boring. I also get to have those moments of existentialism, you know? You feel purely nihilistic. There's nothing to look forward to and nothing to muse about. It's like life is just pretty straightforward. Yeah. The next tweet says, premarital sex and porn addiction only hit you as shameful, guilt, and depressing if you're a devout Christian, or more specifically a Jehovah's Witness or Seventh-day Adventist, because those are the only two that take the Bible seriously. But there are rare exceptions. Here I was being silly, obviously. So the point I was trying to talk about is, you see all this sexual baggage and all this sexual tension that people get to feel and get to be surrounded around is mainly due to religious influence. Guilt is closely associated to narratives on sin and stuff like that. So for most of these people who are heavily invested in feeling very bad about watching porn or jerking off or engaging in premarital sex, usually that guilt arises from the fact that they have a certain worldview which is mounted in religion or the Bible. And it's based on precepts that are telling them that these things are things you should be worried about because you could get your ass burnt. Or you're going to disprove a God that you have a relationship with. That's why I said these things tend to only matter and come across to you as shameful if you have such a worldview that's based on precepts that are telling you that it's shameful and that are bombarding you with the narrative that you are a sinner when you engage in those things. But when you're not, or when you share a slightly contrary worldview, all these things are just going to hit you as ordinary. Of course, there's a clinical level and a psychological level where porn becomes a problem. But the way it hits you consciously is different from a person who's religious. And that was the only point I was trying to stress. And quite frankly, yeah, there is a need for porn to be addressed because it has its side effects. It makes you have this picture of women where you objectify them. They simply come across to you as tools for sexual gratification. It trivializes sentimental relationships and it can belittle marital bonds. But at the same time, I think a little exposure to nudity is good for a human being because it breaks down certain levels of prudishness that aren't healthy, to say the least. And sex is like a part of us. A lot of sexual suppression usually tends to be of no advantage to anybody. So it's the art of having to strike a balance between all these extremes, because everything in this world of man can be overly indulged and become problematic. The next tweet says something like, I want to speak with the vibrance of Anil Seth, the composure of Sam Harris, coupled with the explanatory power of Richard Dawkins and the sophistry of Hitch. What I meant to say there was, Anil Seth is very vibrant. When he's talking, you feel spirited, you feel lifted up. You can almost feel the hairs on your skin erect when you hear Anil Seth talk about consciousness. He just has a certain power to his voice. And then Sam Harris is pretty soft-spoken and composed. Sam Harris is the type of guy that can be talking about very hard and probing questions and problems and debates with a calmness that can break a bone. You know, the guy just manages to keep this almost artistic composure that, to say the least, is admirable. And then Richard Dawkins has a very strong explanatory power. Richard Dawkins has books that can make you fall in love with evolutionary biology. He has a way in which he explains, which is just, needless to say, the least, a gift, you know? And Christopher Hitchens has crazy sophistry. He was a gifted orator and speaker. Unfortunately, he's late now, but his videos are all over YouTube. His voice is just vibrant. The next tweet is a little dramatic. On a serious note, let's just openly commercialize aphrodisiacs, and Zabs can even step in and consider it transcending the limits of human biology. What inspired this tweet is one time at work, people were talking about aphrodisiacs. And if you don't know what aphrodisiacs are, they're basically like enhancers for your sexual performance. So my workmates were talking about aphrodisiacs because somebody had bought something that supposedly is meant to make you last longer when you're having sex. And then when he started talking about the benefits and just how this thing has proved to help out a lot, everybody just suddenly became attentive and came to congregate and join the conversation. Then in that moment, I was like, wow. This is how people want to talk about this. And if people want to talk about it, even that man I was looking up to. Not that it's bad to talk about it, but even him, if he felt the need to move closer and sit here and listen to the conversation, this is something serious. People want to talk about this thing. People want to hear these things. So I just was shocked by the whole thing to a point where I dramatically said, no, we should probably consider commercializing it. Because a lot of people are secretly having a problem of wanting to, to seek some remedy where sex is concerned. And yeah, it's just that the downside for aphrodisiacs is they can make you dependent on them. And then you kill your normal stamina. So yeah. The other tweet says, I'm not a vegan because I'm still a hypocrite. What I meant to say there was, I do realize the moral implications of not being a vegan. I realize that animals are sentient creatures that can experience suffering and pleasure on different levels. And we as human beings who are consumers of these animals induce the suffering and actually foster the suffering. But even after having that realization and also engaging closely with prominent vegans like Vegan Ed, I still haven't made a conscientious decision to stop eating meat. It's something that I really want to do, but baby steps, man. Yeah, and the fact that I can notice the problem and still not act upon it is the hypocrisy I was talking about, so yeah. Some people aren't necessarily friends. They are sort of necessities or corporate partners, but there are those people you meet and have such spirited conversations about the human story, existence, religion, politics, and the wonders of science and philosophy. Those are friends. I think for me, what determines friendship is, one important thing that helps determine friendship is the nature of the conversations that you have with people. Certain people are not really friends. They're just, by the way, people that you know. And it's for that reason why I don't feel the need to keep certain mobile numbers in my phone, because I can't talk to these people about pretty much anything serious. We can't talk about consciousness. We can't talk about the universe. We can't talk about why we're here. We can talk about existence. We can't talk about religion, because everything is a cause for fights. It's a cause for needless disagreement. I don't know what to make of certain friendships. That's why I usually cut certain friendships off, because month in, month out, year in, year out, we're just viewing each other's statuses and doing nothing. We're not even having any conversation to build each other or probe each other's thinking to a place where we can benefit each other intellectually. It's just people existing in a social circle that shouldn't be there. So most of these people I call friends aren't really my friends. So the last tweet reads something like, "Do you know I take my YouTube channel extremely serious? It's because if I die today, it is the only noble thing I can leave behind for humanity." There's a quote I read, I don't know who said it, but it said something like, it's also on my Facebook bio. If you haven't done anything to impact humanity, you should be ashamed to die. And what that tweet said, or what that quote was basically aiming at is, some people live very ordinary lives and haven't impacted anybody in any way whatsoever and just die. You should be ashamed to have such a death. And so for me, my YouTube is basically something I will leave behind for humanity. Somebody at some point will come across it and go like, there was a person who was trying to have this conversation. Even in a social circle where it was hard to have these conversations. Even in a social circle where people didn't want to listen to these conversations, there was a person who dared to try to have these conversations. I don't think there's any advantage in reading a pile of books you can't even share with anybody, or you share within the secret confines of your social circle with your immediate friends. I think that's an imprudent way to approach knowledge or help each other grow. Humanity should be a whole community, and we should be able to share ideas and put some explanatory pressure on some of the things that we take serious. So that's why I have a YouTube account, is to share my story, to leave a footprint behind when I'm passed off. I don't even know what's going to happen to me when I die. But one thing I know for sure is I left something behind. In both the small way and the big way, that is how I impacted humanity.